Bonjour à tous. I trust you had a great morning, and I am aware that there were some activities in the morning as well. It is a pleasure to welcome you all here in Kigali Convention Center for this symposium. I would like to invite all of those that are still in the back, probably maybe to come forth, come closer and enter in the room so that we can start shortly. Thank you. I believe we are all set, or we are finalizing the setting. Dr. Isaac Munyakazi, State Minister in the Ministry of Education, ministerial delegations, and particularly coming from Liberia and Somalia, vice chancellors, academicians, representatives from the private sector, business leaders, CEOs, development partners, and students as well. All protocol observed. Good morning again. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this symposium on technical and vocational education and training. This is a one-of-a-kind gathering that brings together all the needed people to talk about TVET. TVET is, of course, emerging as a solution to unemployment on the continent, but a lot still needs to be done for it to really produce the expected benefits. And that's really the objective of this gathering. How do we take the agenda of developing TVET on the continent and making it more efficient, more inclusive, more integrated, and more sustainable for the benefit of the development of our continent. And as we speak here, I am very happy to see that most or more than half of the room is actually the youth. And this is also the case on the continent, by the way. More than half of the population is young. So all the discussions that we're having here also have the objective of making sure that this youth has a bright future. So I'm very happy to welcome you all for this symposium. Please note that, of course, we are a bilingual country, so we put pride in making sure that all of us can understand. We have translation services available. You will find English on channel 1. Thankfully, I'm still speaking more or less English, so I hope you can understand me. But for French speakers, translation is available in French on channel 2. I am also mindful that we might have Wi-Fi services, just in case this would be needed. This is not entitled for WhatsApp and other social media, but of course, important endeavors related to the proceedings of the conference. Without further ado, I would like probably to share with you very briefly what is this day about and what are going to be the proceedings of the day. We will start right away with the official recognition of different guests coming from 6 countries, over 6 countries and 2 observers countries. We will then proceed to keynote addresses from the chairman of the Private Sector Federation, from the representative of WorldSkills International, a key partner, as well as the present ministers heading delegations that are being hosted here in Rwanda. And then we'll proceed with opening remarks, official opening remarks by our guest of honor, the state minister. Right after that, I'll be honored to moderate a panel on the partnership between industry and training providers in skills development. This will have the objective, 1, to set the scene, also, 2nd, to highlight some of the remaining challenges, but also sharing a little bit of insights on what has been done elsewhere and how can we learn from each other as we go about this journey. After a quick coffee break, we will head to the 2nd plenary session, a panel discussion as well, moderated by Ms. Rika Rwigamba, on standards and quality control as driving factors to promote locally made products. We'll then head to a lunch break, and in the afternoon we'll have 1 plenary session on the factors of success for an efficient TVET system, moderated by Mr. Steve Kamanzi. After a quick entertainment and recommendations on the day, we will then head to the official closing ceremony, on which I will share more information later on. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the Vice Chancellor for the official recognition of the different guests. With your round of applause, Dr. James Gashumba, you're much welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you see me? Oh, I stand here. Very excited to be here in front of you. My name is James Gashumba, and my duty is just to recognize people and introduce people who are here with us. Honorable Minister, State Minister of Education, who is our guest of honor. We have people who will be doing the first kind of session, telling us about themselves, and that is Eugenie Mushimimana, Vice Chairperson, PSF. Could you stand, please, for recognition? Thank you for coming. Okay, PSF means Private Sector Federation. We work very closely with them, and they are our partners, and we thank you for that partnership. Mr. Simon Bartley, WorldSkills International, President, thank you for coming. Simon just arrived this morning. How are you for jet lag? Are you all right?
Also been 2 hours.
Yeah, he came and then straight away went to our Kicukiro campus to view the goings on and the competitors working. So thank you for being here with us. We have 2 ministers from Somalia, Mr. Hassan Mohammed Ali, Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Affairs. Please stand up for recognition. If you can stand up for recognition and wave to the crowd, if you stand up, yes, thank you. He's been here with us. So he's been attending the sessions at Kicukiro campus, and also another Assistant Minister from Somalia, Mr. Saku Dokli. Did I pronounce it properly? Huh? From Somalia, from Liberia. Okay, if you can stand, please. Okay, Mr. Saku Dukli. Pronounce it proper? Okay, thank you for coming from Liberia. And we shall be asking you to come to the front here, and then you'll be presenting something, just a few words. So if you come here, please, all of you, the ones I've read their names. This one. Oh, I think it was. Okay, my apologies. Thank you very much. My apologies. The Deputy Minister of Education is actually Mr. Faisal Omar Goulet. If you can stand up, please, and then come to the front. My apologies. If you come to the front. Okay. So we shall be hearing from our guests, but I just wanted to, if you can sit here, please. If you can sit over there. Now, Minister, I call you last, but you are supposed to be here with us. If you can come and sit in the front, please, here. As you can see, I'm not used to being an MC. Yeah. Last night I was supposed to come here and rehearsal, but I didn't. Yeah. Okay. So what I wanted to do is just introduce very briefly, doing a kind of overview. I don't know if is there someone who is projecting slides? If not, I'll just present. There's supposed to be something for me to present. No? Never mind. What are we doing in Rwanda? As Novella mentioned, TVET is taking center stage in the development of our countries, here in Rwanda, but also the rest of Africa. We realize that we are entering a stage of development very fast. And for this to happen and to actualize, we really need to invest very heavily in TVET. And I'm glad to say that in Rwanda, we have recognized this. And the government is investing very heavily in resources and human resource development of TVET. So I wanted to say just a few things, because I think I have only 5 minutes, because the people are these ones who are going to be saying things about TVET. There are many things that come into play when you talk about TVET. When I do this, you realize it's my age, catching up. There has to be the political will. And if it isn't there in your country, then you take the initiative to lobby. Do you know what I mean by lobbying? You become like a politician. You go to those politicians and lobby hard to make sure that they recognize that TVET is extremely important, not on the fringes, not not as an afterthought, but completely central. There has to be investment in training and assessment. There has to be investment in curriculum development. There has to be investment in teaching the people who teach, what we call TOT. There has to be investment in training our managers, the ones who manage TVET institutions. There has to be participation, this is extremely crucial, of industry. And then there has to be, of course, things like career guidance, monitoring and evaluation, and so on and so forth. Another thing I wanted to mention and highlight is that the quality of training. We don't want to just train people. We have to train our people so that when they come out, they are proud of themselves, what we call professionalism. Doing things very well, to the highest standards. Not saying we are third world or we are Africa, no, no, no. We want to do things at the same standard like everyone else in the world, at the highest level. We want to invest and highlight curriculum development. Probably later on in the session, there will be one on CBT, CBA, okay, competence-based training and assessment, and we'll be touching on that to make our people train both in schools but also in industry. That's extremely important. So without much further ado, I want to call upon the different people here. Minister, you'll be our last speaker, okay? So I'll be asking Eugenie to give us some comment about the role of PSF in TVET, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister of Education, honorable ministers present, distinguished guests, all protocol reserved, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure to participate in this symposium, and let me congratulate first the organizers for gathering experts for different corners of the world to discuss and share their experiences and expertise around different themes related to the contribution of skills development, which is crucial for industrial growth and job creation in Africa. Honorable Minister, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, skills development is central and essential to Rwanda's development agenda. Both Vision 2050 and NST1 recognize skills development as being crucial to achieve Rwanda's long-term goal of becoming a knowledge-based and service-oriented economy. The role of TVET schools is in equipping individuals with sector-specific skills to meet labor, market demands in important, and when there is a comprehensive TVET system in place, the public and private sector are equipped with employees with competitive skills on the market. Honorable Minister, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, sharing experience and expertise during this symposium will be of paramount and bridges possible gap skills in TVET education system. Nevertheless, we help participants to adapt and implement strategies that are sought to systematically align with education skills and workforce needs. This is not only profitable for employers, but as well as for the economic growth of our countries and employability of the youth. I wish you fruitful discussions and especially impactful recommendations that will equip our generation with high standard skills and tangible solutions to macroeconomic constraints such as employment. Allow me to stop by here and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mushimimana, for the PSF for being a great partner in this conversation, and this is paramount in order to have actionable recommendation, as you have mentioned. Now, without further ado, allow me to welcome Simon Bartley, representing WorldSkills International, as a president, for your remarks. You're much welcome.
Thank you very much. And it is great to be back in Africa. One of my ambitions as president of WorldSkills has been to engage with the countries of Africa, the governments of Africa, the educational establishments, and the employers of Africa for the benefit of the young people of Africa. And Minister, may I start by thanking you as a Minister of the Government of Rwanda, State Minister of Education, for hosting not only this symposium, but also the competition that is taking place in the Polytechnic here in Kigali. Without your hosting, we would not be sitting here, and we would not have all of these delegations of ministers and others here to help achieve that ambition that we all have for the youth of Africa. And it is truly good to come to a symposium where all three of the required partners are present: educators, the private sector, and governments. Because it is, I think, impossible, not almost impossible, it is impossible for a country to develop the skills of its youth without that three-way engagement. And let me start by thanking, firstly, the Vice-Chancellor of Polytechnic of Rwanda for hosting this symposium. Let me also thank, as a representative of the private sector, Nada from Festo, without whom we would have struggled as WorldSkills to have engaged both with the Polytechnic and with the government, but also all of the government ministers and officials that are here. WorldSkills is a movement that seeks to encourage the take-up of VET amongst young people. We believe that the future of this world, the future of this and other continents, the future of this and other countries is in the hands of young people. And what we try and do in WorldSkills is primarily shine a light on young people and their absolutely high abilities of being able to be the future and produce the future that we all require. Of course, we need governments to enable, we need educators to educate, and we need businesses in order to tell us what is going to be the requirement of them in the future for labour. Not only the volume of labour, not only the location of labour, but actually the skills with which young people entering the labour market, and all young people are going to enter the labour market, all of those need to come together at an event like this. Competitions are great because they demonstrate in a practical way the skills that the world needs so that parents, educators, businesses and governments can all see what they need to understand in order to ensure that we have a fine tomorrow. So I'm sure that in the symposium today, in the subjects that we have, that you will learn more about how we can take TVET into TVET 2.0 for Africa, run by Africa, for Africa, where some of us give assistance where you need it. So I wish the symposium well, but I would also just like to give one final word of thanks to the staff of WorldSkills International. Not only the Secretariat members such as Grace, who has worked with the government and with the partners of this symposium and competition, but also the volunteers, and I mean volunteers, who have given up their time and have come from countries in Africa to assist in the competition and to participate in this symposium. So Grace, I would like to formally put on record my thanks to you. She has rushed back to the competition. And Andre, who is here as a past technical delegate of South Africa, who has been masterminding the putting together of a very successful competition that is taking place at the Polytechnic. So I wish everybody luck, and I look forward to meeting more of you as the day goes on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartley. I think it's your presence here is paramount as well in order to take it forward and create the necessary synergies on and outside of the continent. Now, without further ado, allow me to invite the Assistant Minister from Liberia for his remarks as well.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ministers of Rwanda, my colleagues, ministers from Liberia, in person of Honorable Mala Sharif of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, or TVET, and we also have Honorable Dominic Kwame, the Assistant Minister for Planning, Research and Development from Liberia. Participants of this unique occasion, we from Liberia are highly delighted and excited to be a part of this unique occasion. We do realize that, Africa has great potentials in youth and also the vast resources that we have on this continent. The issue is, how do we harness the resources to the benefit of the people of Africa? To be able to do that, we need to work with the young people of the continent to help them develop the relevant skills that they need to participate in the development of their respective countries. Definitely, TVET plays a leading role in that. The acquisition of skills for the betterment of each nation is important. And so for us in Liberia, we are looking at the entire education system to be able to transform it and make it dynamic so that the youth will be able to acquire the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude they need through the diversity of the education system. What we're doing in Liberia currently is to create different tracks within the system. We are looking at the arts, and then we're also looking at the sciences, and we're looking at TVET to ensure that youth will be able to transition each of these tracks so that they will be able to create or to be able to achieve to the highest maximum their potentials where their possibilities are. That's what we are working on. And here while we are here, we're also looking at not only to participate in WorldSkills, but we do realize that this country, Rwanda, has made some headways in Tibet. From what we've seen around the country, the transformation of this country, we know that it has been realized because of the potentials of youth, based on the skills they have acquired, the kind of TVET institutions that are around the country. We visited a lot of them, and we are trying now to adopt some best practices that we can take back to Liberia. So we are highly delighted to be a part of this unique occasion. And rest assured that we will be collaborating with this particular country in terms of curriculum development, in terms of teacher training, and all of those things that are necessary to get Liberia back, on foot, to be able to realize what we have in the country, to be able to help our young people so that they can participate fully in the development of their nation. So on that note, I say thank you, and we are highly delighted, and we also say thanks to this country for the very good reception we received since we've been here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like likewise to invite the Deputy Minister from Somalia for your remarks.
Thank you, Honorable State of Minister of Education, Liaison de Gasti, and Participal Leadership, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Somali delegation, we have not to be parties. We'll talk to organization with skills completely African heads of Kigali. It is the leadership expressed and the manifestation in the every for the youth. We are thankful to the leadership of the Rwanda government, the Minister of Education, to the WorldSkills and the organization of the successful the WorldSkills Fund. Thank you, Somalia.
Thank you very much. I think we've had the different insights from the different parts from which Mr. Bartley said that are paramount for this conversation to happen. I would like, without further ado, to welcome our guest of honor this morning, the Honorable State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Honorable Dr. Isaac Munyakazi. You're much welcome.
Honorable Ministers, President of WorldSkills International and delegates, participants representing various countries, representative of public and private sector institutions, development partners, excellences, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you all at this TVET Symposium. This is the fourth day of African Skills Competition 2018, and now it is a great moment for discussions based on what our young men and women have demonstrated in practices. For the last 3 days, the African Skills African Competition 2018 has been going on as one of the events of two combined events, that is Skills Competition and TVET Symposium. The symposiums aims at discussing means to enhance the quality of TVET by making it more market-driven. We all know the crucial role played by education and training in building the capacity of a workforce with the cognitive and technical skills and competences to enhance socioeconomic development. The world is changing. What is needed is actually to make sure that we translate the gain of our education and skills into business at any level. And hands-on skills and competencies like creativity, innovation, problem-solving skills, and teamwork are so critical. The issue of education and workforce development indeed stands high on the agenda of Africa. As mentioned on the agenda, the topics related to partnership between industry, standards, and quality control, and factors of a successful TVET system are to be discussed. I would like to call upon your participation and to use this opportunity in sharing experiences from field and different countries, drawing experiences from lessons learned, and giving feedback in form of best practices and recommendation to decision makers. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, ensuring quality of TVET provision can't be achieved without linkage between TVET institution and the industry, which leads to work-based learning experiences for TVET trainees. Therefore, we need to consider skills not picked from a traditional school setting, but rather typically picked from workplace learning, in company training, internship, all which require investment as stressed during the official launching ceremony. The whole process goes with the consideration of quality standards, quality control, and factors associated with TVET provision. This event is crucial when determining strategy for skills development, and the involvement of the private sector in skills development is paramount for TVET provision of any country in general. We believe that industry has huge potential for skills development, and linkage between the industry and TVET institution needs effort from both sides. This can be achieved through joint labor market analysis, which informs the curriculum development process, trainees receiving skills upgrading from industry to improve their practical skills, trainees be accorded internship, etc. I would like, therefore, to emphasize that TVET has to respond to the needs of labor markets and create a competent, motivated, adaptable workforce capable of driving economic growth and development. It is such a TVET system that has been adopted by the government of Rwanda to provide the proper response to the ambitious goals set in the Rwanda Economic National Transformation Strategy. There is no doubt that similar or related TVET systems are being introduced in other African countries. There are indeed benefits that accrue to all parties when quality training in TVET is guaranteed. For students, it implies an increased capacity of employment. For employers, it improves confidence in the validity of professional competences of employees. And for the community as a whole, it helps to increase the attractiveness of TVET programs and leads to the socio-economic transformation. Hence, by emphasizing the significance to be attached to TVET, we are satisfying a national imperative. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a strong recognition within Rwandan of the importance of TVET to the national development and economic growth. During the last decades, Rwanda has invested significant efforts, mainly in putting in place the governance and physical infrastructures as enablers for a sustainable development for TVET. Our vision for promotion of TVET is guided by the principle enshrined in our Vision 2020, which seeks to make our country a knowledge-based economy that's moving from a third world to middle-income economy by 2020. This vision is shared with other African countries to eradicate the dependence syndrome that is rampant in our developing countries, including thus changing the lives of people for better. I believe that the governments of African countries, through their responsible institutions, will keep giving priority to strengthen TVET system because it is the only guaranteed quick win to achieve the African Agenda 2063. TVET must therefore become a professional insurance and should be key to our response in terms of youth employment or prevention from idleness and to their vulnerable integration within the society that is ready to recognize their position, usefulness, and merit. So I understand there are many important aspects of TVET that this symposium is going to tackle, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations and deliberations by the audience here present that will lead to improving the relevance and attractiveness of TVET sector in our respective countries. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate my appreciation to the organizers of this forum in general. I also wish to thank everybody here present for his or her contribution on one way or another to make this important event a success. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with these remarks, I welcome all participants once again to this symposium, and I now have the pleasure to declare this TVET symposium officially open. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable State Minister. Another warm round of applause. I think, and I hope this sets the scene of our discussion this morning. And now that everyone has been introduced, I'm happy to introduce myself as well. My name is Novella Nikwigize, and I'm a presenter on the national television Rwanda TV. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite you back to your seats as we head to the proceedings of the day. I think our speakers in the opening have shared with us some of the concerns and some of the avenues that need to be explored during the discussions, and this is exactly what we'll aim to do with the 3 panel discussions this morning and this afternoon. I would like to start right away with the first, and I think the most important in setting the scene, really. What are the linkages, or how can we strengthen the linkages between the training and the academia, as well as with the private sector? And the objective of the discussion is really to understand how we can go forward in developing TVET. Since 2014, with Malabo, where Africa took a continental strategy to strengthen TVET in making sure that TVET is more attractive, more inclusive at all levels, and create linkages with the private sector, and also is an occasion to actually empower the youth. Since then, and a lot of initiatives have been developed, a lot of synergies have been created. It's time to take stock, to share some of the success stories that we have witnessed since then, but also to craft pathways on how to go further. So I would like to start by welcoming the presenter for this session, Mr. Richard Nasasira, who's going to share with us a little bit more on what are the key elements to discuss about. And right after that, I will invite my panel for the discussion this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm called Richard Nasasira, the principal of IPRC Kitabi. For those who want to know where Kitabi is one of the beautiful places that you don't want to miss. So I'm going to present to you a very good topic that actually brought us here. If you can look at your neighbor, you realize that he's from a different part of either region or country, and that's what we call partnership. So I'm going to present to you partnership between industry and training providers, the IPRCs in skills development. But I have a story to tell. When I was a kid, and given the fact that I work with animals, Kitabi College is just near Nyungwe National Park, I have small stories about animals. And when I was a kid, we were living with a very big family, but we have the chief of security, and that's a dog. And a dog is a very wonderful animal. It's got so much roles to play, including security, and so we could play with dogs, and they were really doing great work. They're showing a lot of skills in making different things work out. But there is one problem with the dogs. And in Rwanda, when you actually a failure or you fail to accomplish something, then they always refer you to that you're a dog. If you're a young man and probably you fail to get your relationship active and working, then you say, this person is really not doing well. And so there are so many stories, and the reason they say that is because at some point a dog is not good at creating partnerships, especially when there is something driving it, or if it is passionate about something. If you have meat, for example, and you put it before a dog, they will lose focus and they will never work together. They will start fighting. And this is not an African story. It also shared by the Turkish people through their proverb. And they say, if a skill could be gained by watching, then every dog would be a butcher. So today, if we are talking about skills, and gaining a skill is not all about watching. There is much more that we can do, or that we have to do, so as to have skills. And TVET institutions are there to learn skills, or create skills, or impart skills in people. But we are not only there to do the training. There is certainly much more that is desired to be done, and we cannot accomplish that but alone as TVET providers, but also we need to do that with other institutions. And this slide is just to show you who is and who is needed to be involved in a provision of TVET skills. And these are different stakeholders that we can think of, that if we all put all these stakeholders together, and then we will, at the end of the day, provide or develop the skills that are needed within the country. To be a little bit faster, just like any system, partnerships are also systems. Systems made up of parts interconnected to each other to make or to achieve a common objective, which in this case is having developed skills. So if you look at the picture, I don't know whether you're able to see that, but at the core of this, we have views that we have transformed into skilled people. And for us to be able to achieve that, there are different stakeholders that are needed. There are institutions or training institutions that have to be put in place. There are professional associations that have to be put in place. There are quality standards that have to be put in place. There are different tools that you have to use, the competences in form of curriculum that you design and be able to say, okay, these are a package of the skills that we have to provide to the youth and any other person such that he has to. And then we need to create an enabling environment to make sure that all the skills that we have planned or we intend to achieve, we intend to impart into the students, done in a way that is needed. And this enabling environment includes, for example, things to do with TVET financing. If you don't have the financing, certainly the enabling environment will never happen. Then you have to have strategic partnerships with different stakeholders in making the skills development a reality. And these strategic partners can be looked at from professional associations and skills sector councils. We also have SMEs, especially in Africa where our private sector is still at a small level. Then we have the institution in charge of controlling the quality. And all these have to be done such that we create opportunities and a learning environment for the youth in acquiring skills, but also applying the skills that they do acquire. And that can be done through workplace learning, it can be done through internships, it can be done to exposure of students to the real working environment such that they get used to different techniques or are able to apply the skills, the knowledge and attitudes that are done. To be able to do that, you have to have official, a formal kind of working relationship, and that leads us to strategic MOUs with different stakeholders. I was chatting with my colleagues. No one would ever want to be in a relationship when he only expects to lose. They can only be in a relationship if there are wins and losses, or if your inputs and outputs are able to balance, or if your losses and gains are able to balance. And that is captured into strategic MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings, which clearly shows who is doing what is he or she benefiting, and what is she losing. If we put all these things together, then we think partnerships between the training providers and the industry will develop the skills that we need. And I want you to think through this, that we are here and you are yet this evening to witness one of the outputs of working together, the skills, the WorldSkills competition. You will see that most of the youth, most of the people that will participate will be inspired, and they will learn or they will make a change in their skills. I want to end by saying that all organizations, they are as good as their employees. If you ever want to see a very good organization, institution, then look at their employees, their CEOs, their technical staff. And all these employees are got from institutions that train them. Therefore, partnering with training providers or working with training providers, organization working with training providers, it should be looked at as an investment, because you want these people at the end of the day to work and do wonders in your organization. If we don't do that, then I want to assure you that there can never be quality in any given skill if there are no partnerships. You probably be able to move along with a bone, but that won't have any fresh or any quality or any standard, and that's not what we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this useful presentation of just above 5 minutes. But I would like to welcome my panelists so that we can dive a little bit deeper into that conversation. Richard Nasasira, indeed, is the principal of IPRC Kitabi. You're welcome. I would like to welcome also André Vermeulen from the WorldSkills International. It's still early in the morning. I believe we can clap for our panelists to encourage them. Thank you. Alexandre Boin from Swiss Contact, Director for Rwanda, DRC, and Burundi. Aimable Rutagarama from the Private Sector Federation here in Rwanda. As well as Dr. Iman Nadar from Festo Didactic. He's the Executive Vice President of Global Education in Festo Didactic, as well as the Vice President of World Didac. And once again, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the State Minister, who unfortunately has to leave for a different function. But as he has said, he will be following up very closely on the proceedings and the outcomes of the event. Thank you very much for your presence. Thank you very much. Technical issues happens. I would like to start first by thanking the panel and by highlighting that this is a very wide and diverse panel rather than wide. A diverse panel for an issue probably that also requires a multi-sectoral approach. And this is exactly what we want to discuss. We want to see what are the needed partnership. I think we've seen that with the presentation that are required for TVET to really be successful. I would like to start with you, Dr. Nadar. I think you have probably succeeded or have implemented probably this extreme form of what we're talking about. Academia or school and training and private sector in one entity. What, in your sense, are the key benefits of such a synergy at highest level?
Well, I think for representing a company that has been having education as a part of its DNA for a long, long time, decades, I can really say that when you are engaged as a company in education and skills development of your society, you are engaging directly in securing your success on the long term. So engagement of industry and education is just not just a buzzword. It's about economic and social development. And when you are coming to the industry, you should also consider that there is a reason for industry for being. There is a reason for industry to exist. And that's about contribution. That's about social responsibility. That's about innovation. And when a company is even more than to be a passive client of the education system, but an active driver of the education system, then it becomes an active actor of economic and social development of its society. So it's a win-win situation for all. Creating skills means also creating jobs, and creating jobs means also creating prosperity. So I believe that it is very important when you really go around and realize the socio-economic development of different societies around the globe, that the adequation, industry and education has been really working in harmony. And this is what I really wish, truly, for this beautiful continent.
Thank you very much. I would like to chip in, probably, Dr. Vermeulen, talking about skills, and especially employability skills, and this is something that is missing on the labor market. We're having probably close to 100 million young people that come to the marketplace each year, and most of them don't really have the skills that companies need at all. So how do we make sure that the skills that we are now trying to impart into young people are adapted indeed to the industry, and what are those skills that need to be extracted probably from their education?
Thank you very much. In the presentations presented here this morning, I've heard a number of words which will contribute to the process. One is best practice, and the other is partnership. And the other is the theoretical application where you've identified the stakeholders. Now, you have all of that in place. One small item I haven't heard was incentive. However, that's something one can work on. Collaboration will definitely ensure that your students, your graduates, will be absorbed into the work environment. However, to be able to create this collaboration, there are many challenges that need to be faced. And I think we need to realize that the education system, TVETs, universities, they have the best practice in theory. If you have a looking at the hands-on, the practical skills, then that is business and industry. They have best practice in those fields. Through your collaboration, we need to amalgamate those two skill areas. However, there are certain challenges that need to be met for this to happen. First of all, if you have a look at our education system, they are very rigid in their curriculum design and are not always open to change. If you have a look at business and industry has a bottom line, and the achievement of that bottom line is their first priority. Therefore, for them to focus on training and development is a cost and is also difficult to manage. So, in the collaboration process, we're going to have to come down to this word called partnerships and incentive. Our education system is going to have to become more flexible in terms of meeting the demands required by business or industry. If we have a look at our education system, our educators, our trainers, our lecturers need to come closer to what's required within business. The outcomes within education needs to address the needs of business. Once we've addressed that, we can then, through the collaboration process, address both the theory and the skill which is required, so that when a graduate leaves an institution, he's able to perform and not be able to just start working and learn to perform. So I think these are the items that we need to address to make the whole process successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think those elements that you are sharing, both of you, really emphasize on the need for a linkage between the private sector and academia. However, the question remains on at what stage do the private sector actually start working with the training facilities to actually make the young people that are coming out of school employable. I would like probably to have your take, Mr. Boin. I think Swiss Contact has been doing a lot of those interlinkages and activities. What would be, according to you, at what point should the private sector get into the training of its future employees?
Yes, thank you for the question. Swiss Contact, we are working since 60 years in skills development in more than 30 countries in the world. And naturally, we come from Switzerland, and in Switzerland we have a special system also in Germany. You can find that in Austria. Most of the training are done directly in company, so by the craftsman or by the company. And the yards go to the school only maybe 1 day a week just to complement in terms of theory. But most of the training are done directly inside in the company. Swiss Contact, we are used to I will not say duplicate because it's not exactly a duplication, but we are used to work with the informal sector in Africa, especially in West Africa, but also Central Africa or East Africa. So working directly with the craftsman and training the craftsman to be a good trainer for the yards, and also to give them a new curricula that they can implement in their company. And for example, in Rwanda, the last 3 years, we have done more than 600 apprenticeship. An apprenticeship for us is 1 year directly at the company. And the craftsman is responsible to train the apprentices. And we don't just put the trainees there for 1 year, but we follow the development. We follow also the craftsman. We give them pedagogic skills, sometimes some new technical skills. And the result of that is that, in fact, the yards there acquire a very clear idea about what is the work if you are a mason, if you are a carpenter, what is really your work, and you learn directly with the craftsman how to do the best practice according to the country also, because the practice are not the same if you are in Rwanda or if you are in Switzerland. I would say that this system is not something that will replace the school. We also work with the TVET school, and we like to work with all the what have been done in Rwanda, for example, in terms of new school, different level of school with IPRC, TSS, and so. But this way of training is a complement, and it is also something very interesting for the audience there, also for people who are deciding and in ministry. This complement is also something not very costly, and that is also a big interest, because it's not cost a lot to bring a yard to a craftsman, and the craftsman can train him, and the yard is not paid. For the craftsman, we spoke about win-win situation. The craftsman receives a yard, and at the beginning, that really takes time to train the yards there. But if you do a good job, after 5-6 months, the yards can be productive. He can produce something. He can help the craftsman to deliver the production, and for free. So the craftsman can also see an interest to have a new workforce inside his company, and to maybe later, if the workforce is really good, to hire him for a permanent employee. Just to give you an idea, with the 600 yards that we train in apprenticeship during the last 3 years in Rwanda, more than 90% of the yards find an employment after that. So it is quite successful, and it is also another way to train people. I will not say that it must be only this way, but it is a complement way that can be used in Rwanda and other countries, I'm sure.
Mm. Thank you very much for this example and also this experience. I would like to probably ask our friend from the Private Sector Federation and to know, would that model be something that can be applicable in Rwanda, for example, in Africa?
Thank you very much. Before I tackle on the model that my colleague here is mentioning, I would first base on my experience on the type of on-job training that most of the time the private sector is asked to provide to students. There is that industrial attachment of students when they are still in schools. And the other one is the professional internship after they complete I think it was the one he was mentioning. Based on my experience in the business activities from my side, that is engineering and construction, and the hospitality sector and tourism sector, the model, the partnership models are there, and if it's well aligned through partnerships, through formal agreement, participation of all from the industry players and the training schools, I think it can result into benefits for both the students, for the training institutions, and as well for the business people. Sometimes we do agree that we still have a lot of gaps in skills gaps in the people that we employ, and the private sector, the business community is always committed to cooperate for addressing those gaps. But most of the time, we see that we are challenged in supporting these different initiatives to the extent that we feel that it's a cost for us.
What challenge? What challenge? Probably so that we can help tackle.
Yeah, the challenge one that I can say we are challenged because, first of all, the timing and the planning of sending internees. You see, most of the schools, they send the students for internship right at the same time when they are going for vacation. Mm. So we feel like embarrassed to be asked that if I am asked to accommodate 20 students from different schools at my hotel,
it becomes class. There
is a cost associated with that. Like feeding them, like time for the peers to train them. So this, it would be better if it can be planned for a smooth teaching process.
In a better way.
Yes.
Probably I would like maybe Principal Richard to tackle this. This is probably a practical issue, and that's probably the objective of such a discussion. This is a practical issue. Yeah. What do you have to say to that?
Yep. Thank you very much. I would first want to touch on a point you raised earlier about at what stage should the training providers and the partners start or work together. And I think in order to train or education per se, I want to look at it as a process, and therefore should be seen as starting even right before the training, during the training, and after the training. So the partnership between the training providers, the partnership should be there before the training starts, during the training, and after the training. Before the training, because you want to train people to meet the demands, the market demands of the sectors. And that's where we see most of these private and even public stakeholders coming in to define what is actually needed. And then during the training is when you want to share the experiences of the students, of the trainees with what is there on the market. And then after the training, you want to get the feedback of how your students or your trainees are doing. And this links to what is challenging, that the planning process has not always been good. We always release our trainees, for example, as he said, to meet with the private, which at some time is so overwhelming because of numbers of students and the cost involved. And in order to correct that, we would want to see the partnership cutting across from the beginning, during the process, and even at the end. That way it will release some kind of stress on our partners, but also help us to get better results.
Thank you very much. Probably Dr. Vermeulen can help us from, for example, from your experience in South Africa. I think the private sector there, it's quite much more developed and stronger. Are there any better or any best practice in how we engage the private sector at earlier stage, and how to make sure that this internship is not a burden, but rather a benefit for the private sector?
Right. In South Africa, we are probably struggling with very much the same problem you have. We are all busy with negotiations on how we can make a smooth transition. However, if you have a look at WorldSkills, when a competitor goes to WorldSkills to compete, that competitor competes against rules. And this should be the same with your collaboration between education and business and industry. And that would take place within the context of your MOU. There need to be rules. But within those rules, it should not be that education hands over the learners and now it becomes the problem of business or industry. Likewise, with business and industry, it shouldn't be that we're handing over our employees for education and it becomes your problem. That collaboration needs to be a very close knit to make sure that education is continually involved within the practical application, to make sure that it's suitably managed. There need to be absolute directives as to what the exposure needs to be to meet the theoretical. And so too with business. Business needs to set the directives for their employees and the education that needs to be given. So once you have closely knitted the collaboration process, then all of these things will, I think, sort themselves out. So, as with us in South Africa, we are writing white papers and green papers to try and establish this collaboration that will actually help the youth to be able to move forward and become employable employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to bring you back in, and especially in the context of, we've talked about a large number of young people coming on the market, and usually companies do need a skilled and highly skilled labor and do not find it. So it means that we are creating, school systems at some point are creating the next generation of unemployed people, basically. How do we make sure, and probably the importance of the private sector is that they are on the ground. While we are learning, while we are creating a curricula, the private sector is on the ground. They know what are the new trends, what is needed. So how do we tackle, or how do we tap into that particular position of the private sector in knowing what's happening in the marketplace and around the world, from your experience?
Okay. Maybe we are talking in the African context here, and of course we are talking in about 54 different countries, different conditions. Nevertheless, if you just take the entire continent and you make a first analysis at a first glance, you realize that before having a quality problem, you have a quantity problem. Currently, there is not enough supply of education for all youth in the continent of Africa. I was just having a discussion the other day with Minister of Education in Morocco. I don't know if we have here Moroccans fellow here in the room. Almost 30% of the youth in between the age of 15 and 24, they don't have access to education. That's a reality. And if you're just coming back to the 2/3, then they are also discussing about the dropout, people that are starting the education but they are not finishing it for different reasons. Also because education is not attractive, or the program of the education is not attractive, so youth are not pursuing, they prefer to do something else, etc., etc. So there's a bunch of problems, and then we are coming also on the issue of education in terms of quality. I do believe personally that in order to overcome these difficulties, we should also think out of the box and not necessarily put the accent on the formal education, but also trying to solve the problem with the informal education. And informal education, there I see very important the role of the industry and the private sector to play a role, as I was just mentioning before, to be the driver of education systems. I was reading a research article from the CEDEFOP, that's a European research center for vocational education, and they were just making an analysis on the 27 different European countries on those vocational schools that are the most successful in terms of employability, in terms of activities, etc. And they were trying to find out whether yes or no there are common denominations among those schools, and if yes, which one. And one of the major elements that is really giving the success of vocational schools is, again, collaboration. I would like to stress, what Andre was mentioning, partnership and incentive. So, yes, those vocational schools that are having interactions with the private sector within the geographical, let's say, radius of the schools, and they are having a give and take relationship with the labor market, are those that not only, first of all, understand the demand of the industry, but also they are making themselves as an indispensable actor and stakeholder for the entire supply and demand, let's say, in terms of education. And in order to really make sure that the relationship is still existing, and I would like maybe also to bring it to the context of the world and those countries that our friends was just mentioning, the relationship that the industry and schools are having in Switzerland. In many countries, basically, the education system is an operator of the education. But the curriculum is not defined by the educators, but it's defined much more by the labor market and the demand in terms of what we need in terms of skills, and especially so when it comes to the TVET sector. So how to make sure that the private sector, on my right, it becomes an actor and dictate almost what they need, because they really need. They are the final customers in the chain, and they have to define what is the demand in terms of curriculum and skills and ability. So we talk about employability skills, so that back then in the education system, we are really driving whatever it is needed for people to be employed. So I wish, again, a very active interactions in between let's say, the labor unions or employer associations and education systems. And when you go in a certain number of countries around the globe and you realize that many countries you are talking about reindustrializations. Like, for example, the industry and education interaction was existing upon the time, but now, because whatever the reason has been happening all around the last 30 years or 40 years, now there is a demand for reindustrialization of the economy, and you realize that there is a big gap in between the demand and the supply. And why that? Because 30, 40 years it was, again, no connections. And you realize that here in those kind of societies that there is a bunch of certifications bodies, associations that are representing, the industry and try to convert or to define in terms of certification whatever it is needed from the schools and the community colleges to provide. So in other words, they are making an artificial bridge in between the industry and education again.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to appreciate what he mentioned about for the cooperation of between the trainers and the employers. I also wish to commend some institutions that consult the employers or the professionals to contribute during the improvement or development of their academic curricula. But basically this is done for high-level education, like for engineering courses. I remember that sometimes we were contacted by one university, the Institution of Engineers, to give our contribution. I feel like as an employer, as a manager of a consulting firm, I am the best positioned person to know what skills I need from a land surveyor, from a laboratory technician, rather than just academicians to sit and develop what they feel they need to impart to their students. This, specifically for vocational trainings, we face some problems when they are sent for internship. They are just send some schools, they send their students just with a recommendation letter without any joining instructions. You don't know what the package the student does have, what he or she doesn't have, and the training for that person is very difficult. It looks like some just need to come and get certificate of internship, and you feel that is not appropriate. We need to be to know at least what the level of the student, what is expected from his training, so that we can be helpful during all that training session. Thank you.
I think what you're saying is important, of course. One, having probably interaction with the private sector at earlier stage before they reach university or after that, but also what is the accompanying measures once they are sent, and not just sent to the companies like go get an internship and come back with a report, but really the accompanying mechanisms. But I would like to ask you as well on your side. In the private sector federation, there are multiple chambers, and the chambers are really working on a specific sector, so you gain experience and expertise in that particular sector. How do you work with, for example, if it's the IT chamber, for example, do you work with IT faculties in university to actually sort of share some of the new insights that are on the market to sort of guide maybe the curricula as well?
Thank you. I said I must be sincere that I should talk about the two chambers, of which the Chamber of Tourism that I am the chairman, and maybe for the Chamber of Liberal Professions, of which I'm an active member of the Institution of Engineers.
IT was just an example.
So
let's talk to
the other chambers, I think there should be, if it does not exist, that the Rwanda Polytechnic should engage consultation with the whole private sector to establish those partnership with the whole private sector, the whole industry players. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Probably just before bringing in the audience, I see we're running behind schedule. I would like probably just to share with us, you've talked about working with the informal sector, and usually TVET and working with the private sector, we hear formal sector. What are the specifics to work with the informal sector? Is it different with the formal sector? But also, how do we ensure quality of training in that very case?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, the discussion is very interesting because I believe in the partnership between the public, or the schools, or the training institution, and the private sector. But for example, in Rwanda, and this is always interesting to go really in the field. I mean, 6 years that I'm here in Rwanda, the people, the private sector around the school are not big company. It is only small, very small company with craftsmen, with 1 or 2 or 3 employees. And sometimes it's good to speak, to have this partnership, but this partnership is not easy at all to create, because the private sector in such countries like Rwanda, but it's also in West Africa, in sub-Saharan countries, the private sector is not very well organized and also not quite big enough. So the partnership is difficult, and it is also, I like when you speak about thinking out the box. When you see that there is a lot of young people need to be trained, I'm sure, and I believe that the informal sector, so craftsmen can do a part. And maybe when they do that, why not to link this apprenticeship with the formal education later, for example, after 1 year, the student can go back to school to perform the more theoretical training. So there is a lot of different options in between the apprenticeship. I think the two models are really compatible. I don't see a point that is not compatible, and it is a way to create the more seat, if we can speak like that, more capacity to train people. And in terms of quality, it is a good question. The selection of craftsmen are naturally essential. There is craftsmen with a lot of experience, there is craftsmen with less experience, but it goes also to certification. You can certify craftsmen, but you can also make a new way of certification for the yards, not based on the training, but based on skills. And it is more a skills test. We call that reconnaissance of prior learning system. It could be applied for the craftsmen. They have been there for 20 years, never been trained in a formal education, but they can be certified as a good craftsman. But that can also be used for yards who have been trained for 1 year by the craftsman, and they can be certified as a professional. Even they have not been to school, but they are good enough to be a carpenter or mason or plumber. So that also the way of, I think, to reach quality is also a part of certification and doing tests, but really practical tests.
Thank you very much. I think those insights are important. Can we please clap for our panelists? And I would like to take probably 1 or 2 questions from the audience to share either a comment, ask a question, or everyone is late for coffee break.
One question there.
We see 2, 3, 4. Okay. Where are the microphones?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, if the microphones are in front, it might not work.
Good morning. My name is David Chakonta, representing WorldSkills International and WorldSkills Zambia. My comment is on the issue of the partnerships. I think we saw a structure, I think from the first presenter, which showed different elements. Now, from our experience, as Zambia have just been members of WorldSkills International since 2014, but one thing that we think can be the glue that connects all those structures that we saw are actually annual skills competitions. Because by their nature, as you can see, they've brought together government, learners, industry. Now, at global level, WorldSkills International runs international skills competitions every 2 years, meaning that if you have a cascade going down to district competitions, every 2 years there will be a cycle that will force some discussions about curricula, about staff, professional standards. And then on the issue of offloading many learners to industry, having been in the TVET sector for some time, I think we've been victims of that. And it's a bit of a paradox. You have youngsters who want a career and they come in numbers, but then you have industry that will not always be sufficient to absorb them, especially for us in Africa. Now, among the thoughts and ideas that we are thinking of exploring for Zambia, for example, are skills clubs and cooperatives and reserved procurement schemes for both public sector and private sector. There could be incentives, I think, that Andre raised, because if, for example, you have a policy of reserved public procurement within the different government ministries, it might be 15% of, say, the office furniture, meaning skills clubs and cooperatives in colleges and universities can bid within that framework, and I think through that process you might have an incubation process or a laboratory kind of situation that can deal with the issue of youth numbers who are aspiring to have a career, but also quality or employability for the industry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have here on this first line here, then we'll take probably 1 or 2 additional, and bearing in mind that this is only the first session, and the first panel discussion, we'll have time for more comments and questions as well.
Thank you. My name is Melias Zeh Sharif, Honorable Assistant Minister for TVET at the Ministry of Youth and Sport, Republic of Liberia. I have listened to the panelists, and the creation of partnership is necessary in order to foster the absorption of the trainees. My question is, what mechanism or approach that could be used to set the equilibrium between supply and demand, or to have a matching skill or skills that are needed by the industry?
Thank you very much. Thank you, that's straightforward. One last question, and then we'll take one question from the young people as well.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Engineer Ramon Mogadi from Nigeria. My question is this. We've been talking about WorldSkills. We know WorldSkills is doing great as regards to skill competition. But we have this question. After the competition, what next? And the question is this. Young people are looking for empowerment. What will empower them? What will interest them? So the concept of WorldSkills is a great one. But what we are looking at is, after the competition, in Nigeria, we are looking at developing what we call Skill Village. Skill Village Hall is a place where young people with skill are being empowered and create productive activities. And these are the strategies I believe we also need to look at, apart from the skill competition. That's what my contribution, please.
Thank you very much. Just the young person with the mic. With the mic, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Chimimana François Regis from Rwanda, there in Kigali. First of all, I would like to thank you so much, even the first panelists, because my questions and comments are even included of what they are going to answer. The first panelist said that there is something important in these sessions and the other decision making, which is political will. I would like to ask him I think he's Vice Chancellor of IPERS Kigali. What do you mean with political will? Because it's not the few often hearing it. Is it the matter of saying yes by politicians? Is it the commitment of economical and social factors to make decisions? What do you mean with political will? And I would like to ask the first panelist beside you, I mean the white man. He said that, he said that creating a skill is creating a job and is creating more prosperous. I have been confused with that sentence or those words, because we see that with the measurements and statistics of the jobless people and graduates jobless are there from schools. So what are you doing for solving these problems, and what have you done? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the questions. We're going to literally take 30 seconds to, one, answer to a question, and two, probably just a concluding word, so that we can get to the next session. So I will start with the white man just next to me.
Yes. I think there are two issues. One is again the degree of a society that is possible or capable to absorb the number of well-trained graduates. And also, there is a second dimension, which is whether those trained graduates are really well-trained graduates in the taste of the labor markets. That means companies. Let me start with the latter one. What we do, we try to, first of all, learn from best practice around the globe and try to see what is being done in the different countries around the globe, and try to make sure that whenever an education program is going on, this education program is in line to what really those companies existing in the society, let's take Rwanda here, that is really in line to the needs of the Rwandese employers. And again, getting them involved, not let them outside, get them inside, being a part of the education system. And that's very important. So again, there is a skills council. We can imagine that their voice is being heard through the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We can imagine that there is some ideas about informal certification program that being defined by the Employer Association, etc. There are many mechanisms, but again, we need to see what is going on around the world and try to maybe get inspired by those models in order to make sure that those people, those graduates, those young people, they are being well trained according to the needs. But let me come also to the point of the absorption. It has been also raised here in that sense of the room. A society, unfortunately, sometimes you have more demand than supply. Then I would say you are in a luxury case, and there are societies like that. And sometimes you have less demand than supply. And here again, we need also to look at that. So to what degree a society is capable to absorb. And I think what is very important here in the education system, we really need to look at the employability skills, but even better, self-employability skills. How to make sure that those young graduates, once they are coming out of the schools and they don't have a job, they are not just waiting and watching, but really take their destiny in their hand, and they create their own company. And there are a lot of possibilities. I think this is something that we need also to get as a part of education system during the education time. This is about investment in your future. When you have a young person in the school for 3 or 4 years, it should be also part of education to get him inspired, to take his destiny in his hands, and not necessarily relying for his future on others.
Awesome, thank you very much. I would like to bring you in as well. I think we've talked about the private sector as being in the driving seat, or at least being actors. So maybe more initiatives from the private sector towards the the school system rather than the other way around. And I think there was a question on matching skills and needs. What would be probably one of the mechanisms that you can share from the Rwandan experience?
Thank you. From what the suggestion from our colleague from Zambia, the annual skills competition would benefit from to the students and the private sector, the employers, and this can match with the question from my colleague there from Nigeria. As a business person, I would recommend that after organizing all these skills competition, the winners, the best performers can be published in a way, or so they, as an employer, I would wish to have a reference of where I can get a best performer, a best student with skills. So this one can be encouraged. The Regis talked about the political will. I think from different initiatives that we are seeing, there is in Rwanda, we can witness that there is that political will of developing TVET skills. This can be confirmed through the different supports, from different development partners that we are working with. But what needs to be addressed is just to have a comprehensive manner of managing all those initiatives and plans for capacity development. For instance, in the tourism sector, you all know that there is a tourism entities licensing that has been published as a law, as a must-do for all business entities. So in parallel with that law, there is there is a ministerial order that is going to be published that includes tourism development levy. That levy is a contribution of the business owners to a fund that is dedicated to specifically for capacity building and marketing. So this, as a business people, we support this with our contribution that we need to have our sector to improve, to have the right skills, and so we are the first beneficiaries of having those skills, those required capacities among the young people. So we are ready, we are willing to support in all means so that we can fix all those gaps.
Thank you very much. I would like probably to bring you in as well, especially on the question of not only matching the needs and the skills, but also we've talked about sustainability, and this is one question that is coming from what he's saying on the financing. Are they financing avenues to make sure that the apprenticeship or the different TVET initiatives can actually be sustainable on the long run and not be a cost?
The same question can come for the formal education, because TVET school and the TVET system cost also a lot of money, and sometimes it is difficult to finance. For sure, the sustainability is a question, but when you have a craftsman who are well equipped to train young people, he can continue to do that even with very limited resources, because he has already the workshop, all the machines are there, everything is working, he produces something, so he can have 1 or 2 youth with him to train. But what I defend here is not that it is the only way. I'm very happy that there is a lot of school in Rwanda. It is not that I said. I said that is very a complement, and I just show that there is a complement. There is a possibility to open and to do more in terms of skills development when you embrace also the private sector, and especially the informal sector. Sometimes we think about private sector, but we think big company. But I'm sure, and the experience also show that good craftsman can be a very good trainer, and that we have never to forget that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vermeulen, would you help us as well on what about after the international skills competition? How do we further engage the youth and empower their skills after that?
Right, I think that's a question that many people and many member countries ask. Is we have invested so much into a young learner or young learners in various skill areas. We've taken them to competitions, be they international or be they national. We bring them back, what happens to them? The easiest solution, obviously, is to allow them to disappear into the woodwork, and then it's nobody's problem. However, these young people, the amount that has been plowed into them, you now need to draw on your return on investment. And this is where these young people need to, and I spoke about incentive. Incentive is not always a financial. Incentive is purely recognition. This is where you need to recognize the achievement of this young person. And this young person, if you take that young person within his field and you make him a leader or you make him a mentor to the other learners, that in itself would be a recognition that would boost that particular individual. It will also motivate your other students, and so doing, improve your whole concept of the process you're following. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last word comes to you, Principal Richard. What is, for you, probably the main avenue or the way forward in developing TVET schooling?
Yeah, again, it goes back to streamlining the way we've been operating between the TVET training providers and the private sector. And that has probably, in order to remove all the barriers, have strategic partnership agreements such that we can know their operations and we align it with our training needs. Because I'll just share an example where we try to involve the private organizations into our programs from the training, before the training, during the training, and after the training. And we realized that after the end of the training process for the program we are running, the organization we were partnering with was already identifying the best talent out of our students. And after they graduated, they just picked 10 students from our program and they started employing them. So when we start earlier and work with the private organizations, with different entities, they are there to identify the best talent. And that will make sure that even the training we are giving is fitting into the needs of the private sector organizations. And if we can continue to harness that kind of relationship, I'm very sure it will help us develop more skills for the private sector, but also make our work easier as training providers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that will be the word of conclusion for this panel. I think we have shared a number of important insights on what all the initiatives that you have been doing in the sector. Probably some of the key messages for me, at least, that first, the private sector has to be an active client, and not just wait for young students to come out of the school system, just as we wait for bread coming out of the oven, but really get involved in preparing, putting together the flour, the water, etc., etc. We also shared and emphasized on the importance of partnership and the collaboration that is important, and also how do we make TVET and engagement in TVET for the private sector beneficial and not just a burden. It shouldn't be just seen as CSR, it's corporate social responsibility, and that's all. How do we make it become really a benefit for them? Then the partnership has to be before, during, and after, as we have said. And education, both education and private sector have to be involved at all stage. We also talked about not only the quantity, but also the quality. The problem of the quantity and the quality, which is usually we don't have nice schools, or the curricula are not adapted, but sometimes we don't have access to education and TVET as well, so that's important. How do we think outside of the box? I think this is a challenge for all of us. And at the end also, employability skills, yes, but also self-employability skills. And creating probably more entrepreneurs, because that also is the way to go. So those are some of the key messages, and I hope that this has set the scene for the next conversation to happen with our two next moderators. So without further ado, and without being the barrier between you and your coffee break, I would like to ask you to thank my panelists. I think they did a great job. And to invite you officially for the coffee break that is served outside. We shall be back in just 15 minutes to continue with the proceedings. Thank you very much. Rika Rwigamba, who's going to usher us into the next session. That will start, of course, by a presentation, and then she'll introduce her panelists. So without further ado, a warm round of applause for Mr. Rwigamba. And you should have taken coffee by now, so you should have had a lot of energy to welcome Ms. Rika and her panelists. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Novella. Thank you, Novella. Good afternoon. So this is to emphasize that we have to do a lot of catch-up, given that we are behind schedule. We'll start first with a presentation by Dr. Theodore Habimana, and then we'll proceed to welcome our panelists and have a discussion. And really the idea, given the time, but also just generally, we would like it to be very interactive, and then this will just be the beginning of the conversation, and we can continue afterwards. So allow me to first introduce Dr. Theodore Habimana. He's a specialist in charge of standards and guidelines from Quality TVET at Workforce Development Authority in Rwanda, WDA. He has been working as director of TVET training for 6 years, and served as vice principal in charge of academics and training at IPRC Gishari. Prior to joining TVET, Dr. Theodore Habimana worked in information and communication technology and banking sectors, where he worked as CDMA engineer at ZTE Company, just to mention a few. So Dr. Theodore Habimana holds a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication engineering, a master's in telecommunication engineering, and a PhD in communication engineering from the Bercham International University based in Madrid, Spain. So I'll welcome Dr. Theodore to give us just a very short presentation, and this will be followed by the panel. You're welcome, Doctor.
Not yet ready. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Mwiriwe. Bon après-midi. Good. Thank you, the Vice Chancellor of Rwanda Polytechnic, the DG of WDA. Thank you, the participants. We are, after the first session on the partnership, we are going to discuss the standards and quality control, which can be a driving factor to promote locally made products made in Rwanda, made in Tanzania, made in Ghana, made in Liberia, products, made in Africa products. When we talk about standards, the standards themselves, next slide please. When we hear about standards, we can ask ourselves, what is it? What is it about? What is standard? From those in charge of logistics, can you play on the light so that the people cannot see well the presentation? They can reduce like, oh, okay, good, well done. So, saying that, the standards themselves, quality itself has to be defined or as an achievement or at a certain level, acceptable level, which is achieved. But the standards have to be set by a competent authority. And you will see that we have a various type of standards, both national and international standards. But coming to the industrial standards, These industrial standards, which are regulated by the International Standard Organization, or ISO, at international level, and various bodies at country level, they have to be connected to the learning standard, which is the big question we have to ask ourselves. Then, the learning standards based on the competence standards, or the national competence standards, which are set by the employers, by the industry, by those who will employ them. Then they set the occupational standards, which have to be respected while designing the curricula and designing all of the teaching tools in the academics. We ask ourselves, what is competence? What is competence? From the previous panel, my colleague from the private sector was really recommending that every year we should have a skills competition so that he can grab in and know who are more competent, who are more skilled. So who is competent? Who is competent in the industry? The competence is itself, you can find a various number of definitions, and some of the components of the competence are hidden. There is some you cannot see. Sometimes you recruit someone who is very well skilled, very good at explanation, but when he or she is working, you can say, I think I did not choose the best one. So that is the hidden side of the competence. The competence standards, which do not exist in most of African countries, including ours, for which some countries like Kenya are still under development, they have to be used especially while recruiting. When, again referring to my colleague from the private sector, when you want to recruit a carpenter, a plumber, what are the standards for a good carpenter, for a plumber? Sometimes I refer to my colleague, to my friend, so he's setting the standards for me. These national standards should exist in each and every country so that they will help while not only setting the curriculum, but also while employing, recruiting those people to occupy the positions. The standards and quality control, either in industry or in academia, cannot be distinguished one from another. They have to go always together. The quality control is defined by the factors which are involved in production. The international standard, the standard 9000, defines the quality requirements. It was more explained by the ISO 9001, which gives the 3 aspects of quality control. These 3 aspects, they are control and on job management, the competence and qualifications, and the soft elements. These soft elements, most of them are those hidden, which make the hidden part of the competence, the soft skills. In TVET, we do not only concentrate on the hard skills, but also we offer the soft skills, the communication, the team building and working, interpersonal communication. These elements, they are very important elements of the competence. Then, the quality control has to be maintained by what? By inspection. When we talk about inspection, either in a company, in a factory, in a school, in what, we used to have those inspectors which are like old policemen. Today, policemen are friends. They are not like policemen in the 60s or 70s. Today, policemen, they catch you. Sometimes they drive you. You remember in Rwanda, during the festivities of the end of the year, we know that sometimes they will be driving us up to home. And so we enjoy that. So the inspection is there to make sure the quality is maintained, to maintain quality. The inspection should not be only from outside, from the inspection bodies. Even the company, the factory itself, the school itself can carry out its auto inspection and make sure if all of the quality standards are being respected. Otherwise, if that is not done, there is a risk of the quality of the outputs. There is a risk that the output will be lower quality or sometimes without quality. But when the inspection is regularly carried out, we have the total quality, that is the total quality management. As a lecturer or as a teacher, always, when after any lecturer, we have to give a homework. We are going to end with some questions about the total quality management in our institutions. We have to ask ourselves why the total quality management, is it important for you, for your institution? And is it relevant? And how do you achieve the quality performance using the total quality management and other principles? And how do you maintain quality performance? And then what is your experience from your country, from your ministry, from your country, from your company? What is your experience in total quality management? That is the homework. I think the panel members should try to answer to that homework. Otherwise, we will stay here for 1 month or 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theodore. Another round of applause for the content and the timekeeping. So now I'll call upon our panelists. We have Tulani Mgomezulu. So we'll welcome him to come before. And please, yes, welcome him with a hand. He works for Lincoln Electric South Africa as technical manager and welding engineer. Our other panelist is, we have Doctor already there. Then we have Dr. Kipkirui Langat from Kenya. He's the Director General of Technical and Vocational Education and Training Authority in Kenya. Our next panelist is Samuel Moranzi. He can also proceed in front of us. He's the Director of Engineering and Urban Planning Standard Units. We have Yoon Yang Jun, who is the TVET Technical Assistance Pooled Fund, a program manager at COICA, which is a program that is co-funded by the Ministry of Education and COICA. And that will be it. So please, again, another hand of applause just to make them feel comfortable. So thank you, dear panelists. As we said, I think we're going to just go straight into the discussion. And I want to focus more on the industrial standards. I think Theodore gave us a very good picture of the different types of standards and how it's complex and how competence is actually transformed to make sure that we have the skills. But the issue of industrial standard is something that on the continent continues to be a challenge. And one of the questions that have actually been asked around, especially by the private sector, is whether standards and quality control mechanisms contribute to the development of the local industry or limit investment in the local industry. So I don't know what you have to say about that. So they basically feel that the nice policeman doctor was talking about actually policing and basically saying you can't meet the quality, so you'll have to close. So are these standards helping companies or are they destroying it? And maybe I'll start with June.
Thank you. Well, when we talk about TVET, let me talk in the perspectives of TVET. The TVET is not only education, but also the labor market intervention. But the question is, what labor market are we talking about? Are we talking about international labor market or the regional and the local local labor market? Well, nowadays, many developing countries are tendency to focus on the international labor market in TVET. Well, I would like to take an example of some Asian developing countries. Actually, some Asian developed countries have excellent TVET focusing on the international labor market. However, no graduate would like to get employed in the local industries. Also, they actually fail to get employed in the local industries because they have a very high expectation. As a result, local industries are crawling to promote the locally made qualified products. Well, this also happened in Rwanda as well. According to the latest trade survey, which WDA conducted, the number of new jobs in the local industries are much less than the number of graduates in TVET. So I believe it's time to focus more on the local and the regional labor market in TVET. Local means, many people think local means lower quality, but local doesn't mean lower quality. Local means opportunities, employability, and promotion to the local industries. So I strongly believe when we focus more on local and regional labor market in TVET, the standard in TVET industry can make a collaboration and in fact contribute to the local industries. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's very, yes, that's very, very helpful. And maybe just to keep on that question and ask Sam from the Bureau of Standards, I think one thing that June is talking about is that local is not, bad. It's not low quality. But we also see that we saw in the presentation ISOs and all these international. Are we saying and walking the talk, or are we pushing people to go into more of the international? And then maybe understanding where does innovation come in? Is there a way where some of these standards for things that maybe don't exist, where you could have young graduates or people in TVET, we can actually come up with an innovation, and then we have a specific Rwandan standard?
Thank you, moderator. I strongly believe that from the standards point of view, if you allow me, I will probably start by just giving a little bit of explanation on how, in standard perspective, we can link the local market with the international market and what it means. Generally, we have 4 levels of standards. If you go for issues to do with the geographical implementation or geographical location of where standards should be implemented. International standards are implemented internationally. That means they are meant for cross-border trade. But from international standards, you can also have what we call regional standards, like East African Community. Like currently we are going for African free trade area, continental free trade area. So we are now looking for the whole market of East Africa, of Africa as probably local market, or East African community as a local market. So what we call regional standards, they are standards defined to just help intertrade within what we call economic blocks. We can also have national standards, but those national standards are generally, they are linked to international and regional standards depending on what you want. And international best practices, they are telling us that actually much of our standards, our national standards, even regional standards should be aligned to international standards. Then from national standards, we are allowed also to have what we call company standards. So the company standards, they come in as just to help you to be on top in terms of competitiveness and streamlining your quality above the available quality on the market. So coming back to the question now, we are saying right now that standards do not hamper this, the business. Rather, they are foundation and major drivers of business improvement, if I may call it. Just to give you an example, Doctor talked about the ISO 9001. It came in as a result of the best practice today, as a means of now translating the concept of total quality management system, the concept of total management into practice. Then we are having that standard of ISO 9001 as a quality management system, giving requirements for any system now to give us the quality we want. From the system, you can have even products. As we used to say, you can't have a good quality product if it is designed in an environment that is of good quality. So then, good news is that now we are having, I think starting from this year, we are having now a specific standard on quality management system for education. Now it is there. It is ISO 21001. And I encourage everyone here, when go back your countries, try to look at that standard and see what it can give us as improvement in our education systems. The point here is that standards are here to help us now move forward our business rather than killing our business. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a lot of, we already have homework, so thank you, Sam. We'll go and read the standard. Maybe allow me, I'll jump to Lani just as a follow-up to this. So we understand, that the importance of standard, but what is the readiness of our local industries to cope with these international standards?
Thank you. It's an interesting question, but as part of my answer, first part of my answer, I would like to say that given the diversity of industries and economies in the continent, I don't think the level of readiness you would say is the same for everybody. But having said that as well, in many cases, my view is that most of the industries can never claim to be ready for any change in standards. Rather, certain people within the system have got to take a lead position to say this is the time to start implementing the new standard. Otherwise, if you have to wait for everyone to claim that they are ready, they will never actually proclaim to be ready. And there's many reasons for that. We've seen few standards being implemented in South Africa, where I come from, and they usually met with resistance, and for obvious reasons. In some cases, if you start introducing new standards to the industry, local industry, there's cost implications. Some people have to start purchasing new equipment, which in some cases is expensive. Some people have got to start acquiring some skills or adding some members to their team, which they didn't have to add before the standards was introduced to them. So there's few issues that come to play. That's why there's normally some resistance. But if the key role players in the industry start saying, okay, you are giving services to me, but in order for you to give services to me, I'd like you to have 1, 2, and 3. I want you to have these accreditations. I want you to follow these quality management systems. So I think that's how I'd like to respond to the question.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So it's not easy, but it's important, and it just takes leadership. So I'll go to Dr. Langat, who has been, you've been in the industry for over 20 years, and working both in the TVET, but also here in Africa and across and around the world. My question, based on what we also heard June say, that TVET is beyond just, there's the education, but there's also the labor market information, the labor market interventions. How can then TVET regulators and industry regulators collaborate and harmonize their standards?
Okay. Thank you, moderator, for that question. Allow me first to say that I think in the last decade, we've been having a lot of reforms in education and training sector in Africa. And this is motivated by a number of global, continental, and regional and national agendas. We are all pushing the SDGs, and specifically in TVET, call number 4 on quality education, and call number 8 on decent work and economic growth. We have the AU as agenda of 2063, which is facilitated through the AU TVET strategy, a policy framework that is helping a number of African countries to reform their education to respond to the global changes. And in a number of regional blocs like SADC, East African Community, ECOWAS, and the rest, we are implementing a number of regional initiative that is trying to help integration and goods and services, including training and skills development, is one of the agenda. I think the other important thing we probably appreciate for Africa is that 30% of the remaining natural resources are still in Africa, while Africa control about less than 3% of the global market. And the reason basically is because we are trading on natural resources other than finished product. And the thinking now in the leadership is that we need to go to processing our resources. And the key factor and enabling factor to that is skills. And that is why everywhere in Africa, the agenda is talking about skills development. Of course, we are also being pushed by the Industry 4.0 while bringing competitiveness. But for ourselves, we have the advantage of youth in terms of, we have close to 200 million youth. Over 100 million of them are unskilled or semi-skilled, and we need to process them. And basically, that is what is driving us. Then back then to your question is, the reforms that we are implementing is basically driving two things. One is to produce competitive, skilled workforce for the expanding socio-economic sectors, and two is to help our youth to take advantage of these opportunities. And therefore, what we have in most of the African countries, we have put policies, both policies and legal framework to help this. And we have regulators, as you've said, that try to merge the training needs into what is in the sector. As my colleague from Rwanda had said, in the sector, they have been helping the competitiveness of production of goods and services through the development of standards for industry. We are now saying we need to use the same standards to inform our training through development of what we call national competence standards, which my colleague at Soro produced. And therefore, our working relationship will start by, first of all, having the industry to take the lead in terms of determining what goes into the training. We require what we call the National Skills Council, which is formation of the industry sectors and experts that will develop occupational standards. The occupational standards inform the competency standards, which will form curriculum development, delivery, assessment, and certification, the entire quality assurance system that go along with it. And this will help us to make sure that our education is relevant. Lastly, what do we...
Really lastly,
Yeah.
so we give a
what
chance.
What shows that a country has prepared itself to meet this requirement? One, you must have a national qualification framework that is comparable internationally. Two, I mentioned Sector Skills Council. Three, you must have sustainable funding mechanism, prepare trainers, and infrastructure that will help that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the following question is really going to be one question for the whole panel, and also just linking it, we have in the room a lot of youth, a lot of young people, and they've been very, somebody said they were very good and very silent, and we thank you for that, but we really want, before we open up to the debate, to have a question around, you know, what can we tell and how can our TVET graduates contribute more to the local industry development? And I'll start with Dr. Theodore. What are we telling our young people here who are eager? Are you eager to contribute? That's not very eager. Are you eager to contribute? Yes, they're getting eager. So, Theodore, how can they contribute?
I think they should be the one in the best position to answer to this question. However, the TVET from all over the world, as you have seen, has contributed a lot to the development of the industry of the various countries, and it is that industry which really has revolutionized the world economy. The graduates, before they are graduates, they are students. When they are still TVET students, they have to start thinking about their big responsibility of driving the country's economy. As my colleagues have tackled it, they must know what is the industry is. What does it require from them? Industry is very dynamic. Today we are talking about the fourth generation of industry. The fourth generation of industry is basically more automatic. It is employing a lot of machines, interconnected, self-controlled, and having some artificial intelligence. So the technician, the TVET graduate who will be there, his or her responsibility is to cope with that dynamism, to cope with that change. The change in the industry, some say that when the industry gets more automated, that reduces the number of employments. Unfortunately, I don't agree with them. What changes is the role of the human being in the industry. In today's or tomorrow's industry, the human being will not be mainly using the hands in the factories. They will be using their brain. But they must understand those processes. The tomorrow's industry will require the leadership. It will require leadership in all of that. Those soft skills we were talking about, the leadership, the teamwork, the team construction, and the possibility of managing complex processes. The industry will require that. So a young graduate who understands what the industry requires will get out or will graduate when he has acquired all of the requirements. Then when he gets to the industry, what is needed is flexibility and humility for long life learning, because every day we are learning. Every day they will be learning.
Thank you. Very wise words. And maybe just quickly to hear from each one of you on one tip for the young people, and maybe I'll start back again. June, you mentioned about think local, act local, that's where the jobs are. So, but what are you telling our young people who are looking at maybe working for some of these international companies or are being taught about international standards?
Well, in this country, I love Inyange, the Inyange water. That's what we are drinking. Well, I believe the Inyange will grow more, and they will become the multinational companies. Well, in my country, there are some the giant companies, including Samsung and Hyundai and LG, but they're starting from the selling some sugar canes and some sugar products and some like water and so on and so on. But gradually, we have developed those industries through, as my colleague said, through gradual and strategic accreditation procedures, as well as some quality standard. Well, I believe we don't start from, we cannot jump into the highest level of the quality product in this country. However, we can step up gradually and strategically. So I would like you to become I don't know, you may think, I don't want to work in the water industry. I don't want to work in the basic industry. But we can gradually grow up all together. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that deserves a round of applause. Tulani, your piece of advice.
In general, I would say in Africa, there's still a whole lot of opportunities for companies from abroad to come and do investment in the continent. And obviously with other underdeveloped countries like ours, there's always even a bigger opportunity for growth and economic stimulus. So the current situation now is such that the young people, like I was speaking to some of them yesterday, they feel that, okay, they're enrolling to educational institutions, but they really don't see where they're going to be working when they finish their degrees or their diplomas. And some of my iterations yesterday to them was that these things happen gradually, and the one thing you don't want to see in future, or the place where you don't want to find yourself in future, is when the opportunity comes. If one of the European or American companies comes to Rwanda one day to build a massive factory and opens doors for all of the young Rwandans, they find that you as a youngster are not ready. You haven't completed any of your educational degrees. So my encouragement to the young people is to continue to empower yourself, and also just to also elaborate on, I think you made a comment about going abroad and so on and so on. I think we've been talking about collaboration this morning. I don't see anything wrong. Actually, I do encourage people to, if there is a opportunity in South Africa, to go and expose yourself to an industry which is not necessarily available in Rwanda. Go there for a few years, and hopefully you'll come back after a couple of years to empower others in Rwanda, whether it's in South Africa or China or USA, whatever the case is. So we need to continuously empower ourselves as young people, and this is our Africa. We have to do it ourselves. Africa will rise. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Maybe Dr. Langat, I think we mentioned here the TVET graduate. We know that one of the reasons we are encouraging TVET is the hands-on training and the ability to be employable if we quickly or quicker. So what would you tell them as TVET graduates? How can they take advantage, and what role can they play in industry, the development of the industry on the continent?
Okay, thank you. I think, as I mentioned, a good TVET system will produce two types of graduates. One is a graduate with the skills, both technical and soft skills, for gainful employment. and who can be employed by any sector. And 2, a graduate that is ready to go for self-employment. And what we are currently emphasizing for training providers is to start creating enterprises through their institution by making sure that students are involved in creativity, innovation, and enterprise generation. So I'm seeing the next CEOs of the blue chip companies that we are going to create in the regions are the students that we are currently having in our institution. The opportunities are there. Take it up. The government and all other stakeholders are supporting you. We want to see you running your own companies as CEOs and chief executives. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the next CEOs of the chips company here, so we should make sure we network with them. And don't forget us when you become big CEOs. And then we'll ask Sam for his words. What kind of tips would you give our young people?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. My last word on this is that I do believe that the next or the future of Africa lies in the hands of this young person in front of us. Reason being this, Africa is the least industrialized continent on this earth. And we want to move forward so that we can catch up and get to where others are. But there is a big challenge ahead of us. We are entering an era where now these 4th industrial revolution technologies are coming in. If you look at those technologies, they are now presenting a very big challenge to us because we are somehow behind in terms of competencies. So what we need to do, first, my message goes to people who are training these young people that much as we are looking at our local market, much as we are looking at challenges in our local environment, we need to think beyond that and see in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, shall we be part of the global market? Because that's where we are heading. Next is this. I mentioned the new standard that is coming in for quality management system for education. It is clear within that standard that one of the education system products is those graduates and their competence. So we can't expect them to cope with new trends or where we are heading with this 4th industrial revolution movement if we are not giving them the right skills, the right competencies. Not forgetting that we need primarily to play with the attitude of the people. Currently, if I look at how we are moving, I see we have a big challenge in terms of developing positive attitude in our students. They get out of the institution, but if you ask them, what is your aspiration? What do you think you are going to do? Actually, they don't have, a clear vision of what they want to do and what they want to achieve. So, to me, I believe that the future of Africa is in the hands of these young kids, but there is a lot of work to do in terms of now merging what is happening in our education system and what the market needs. And by concluding, I will say that standards will always play as a bridging, it's a bridge between what is happening at school and what is needed on the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When I sat before, during the first panel, I sat next to a young person who told me that there's a difference between young people and youth. So, and I think I may have said young people many times, but so I'll now open it up to the youth in the audience, but also everybody else for your questions to the panel. Do we have a mic that's moving? Yes. Maybe we can start here, a gentleman on the second row here, and then behind him.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. Mumuni Sulemana is my name, from Ghana.